Analyze the prologue a little bit further. We figured out already that it's a 14-line poem. It's a Shakespearean sonnet written in iambic pentameter with a specific rhyme scheme. We've located the quatrains. We've looked at the couplet. We figured out it's heroic. Now I want you guys to analyze a little bit more regarding some lit terms and lit features that we're going to be studying. So I want you and a partner to sit and talk about and go over the question in purple. What event or events does Shakespeare foreshadow or give hints to that will come in the prologue? We'll come back and talk in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back. All right, the first thing that I want to talk about as far as the foreshadowing is concerned is that Shakespeare is actually telling us that these two young star-crossed lovers will take their life. We know they're going to die, and we actually know that because we've been studying the pattern of a tragedy. So what I want you to do right now is to take a minute, and I want you to write in that number 1, we are learning that there are little hints to them taking their life leading to a tragedy. So Shakespeare provides hints in the prologue that the young lovers will take their own lives, thus leading to tragedy. All right, now you are going to go back, and I want you to do this part independently. So in red, underneath where you just answered that, I want you to type this along with me. So I said, now go back and complete the following text marking. And there's going to be some very specific things you're going to go back and text mark. So the first is imagery. Anytime that you see something that appeals to your senses, you are going to mark it, and you are actually going to highlight in yellow. Any words that make you either see something vividly, it feels like you could touch it, smell it, whatever, okay? Next, I want you to look specifically for some examples of figurative language, in particular personification. So I want you to underline one example of personification. Third, we're going to go back and think about some of the topics we're tracking. And so there are 4 main topics that we're looking at within the play. We're looking at social conflict, courtly love, the idea of fate, and the role of the confidant. And Shakespeare hints at some of these things in his prologue. So there are 2 topics I want you to look at. And I want you to highlight examples of these in pink. And there are 2. I want you to look for examples of fate and courtly love. And if you need to look back at your notes on this, please do. They're in your strategies for understanding Shakespeare notes from the end of last trimester. So that's what I want you to go back, figure out, talk about, and then we'll come back and talk in a little while. All right, lastly, with this prologue, I want to look back up and talk about some of the imagery that you found, some of the examples of figurative language, as well as the topics that we're tracking. So the first thing I asked you to do was to locate imagery or something that appeals to your senses and highlight that in yellow. So I'm going to change my highlighter to yellow, and I want to hear from some of you. All right, some of the things that I saw that were pretty vivid were the words blood, death marked, love, fatal. Those terms all really stick out to me and show me that there's going to be some tragedy within this play. So right here where it says civil, blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these 2 foes. They have this love, but it's a death-marked love. And I think that's pretty strong imagery right there. And that they're going to bury their parents' strife with this death or this tragedy. So all of those really stand out to me as being strong images. Second, I asked you all to underline an example of personification. The example of personification that I found is towards the end of the sonnet or the prologue, and it's actually on line 13. It says, "The which if you with patient ears attend," and I am going to underline the patient ears because ears are not patient. People are patient. That's a human characteristic given to a not human object or thing. And lastly, I asked you all to highlight in pink an example of fate and examples of courtly love. So I'm going to change my highlighter to pink. I'm going to scroll back up here to the prologue, and we are going to mark some examples that we found. So first, this idea that these two households in line 1 are both alike in dignity, which we already said that means two families of the same status or social status. That's an example to me of courtly love, and the reason being is that one of the rules is that the families had to come from the same socioeconomic background in order to be courtly and have this courtly love, and usually from a high socioeconomic background, so they were wealthy. Second, we have some examples of social conflict. So right here, because I highlighted that in pink, I'm actually going to also write down what it's an example of, and that is this topic or this idea of courtly love. Next, if we look here to line 3, "From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean." We're referencing the conflict here between the families and this ancient grudge, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. That's extraordinarily important, and that helps represent this idea of social conflict. I don't think I asked you guys to locate an example of social conflict. So go back and do this as I'm talking through it. I should have asked you to do that earlier. All right, next, there's some more examples down here of courtly love. So we look at the star-crossed lovers. This is kind of 2 in 1. So I'm going to highlight star-crossed lovers take their life. The fact that they're star-crossed lovers has a lot to do with fate. And the reason being is that it's referencing actually astrological, I don't know if that's the right word, like astrology signs, like the stars, and that means that they don't have control over what is going to happen. So Shakespeare believed a lot in the fact that fate was going to occur based on astrological things or the stars. And so you'll see reference to stars, the moon, the sun frequently throughout his play. Also, the fact that they're star-crossed lovers and they take their own lives, that also helps us kind of track the topic of courtly love again, because of the fact that they are star-crossed lovers. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about here? Fate, courtly love, death-marked love. Okay, the fact that they have this death-marked love. So if we scroll down here, and it's already highlighted in yellow, but at the start of our third quatrain, I also want you to just put a little maybe bit of pink highlighting around it, because the fact that their love is death-marked is important and points to the fact that they don't have control over it. It will happen. So fate again. And anything else that you guys want to mark that we haven't talked about, feel free. Okay. So now if you take a look at our prologue, it's 14 lines of Shakespearean text. It's a sonnet, and we have gone through it, we've read, we've reread, we've had some repetitions as far as vocabulary is concerned, we've summarized it in our own words, we've modernized it, we've marked the sonnet for meaning, we've marked the sonnet for figurative language. We're going to be doing very similar activities throughout this unit leading up to your final summative assessment, where you will be actually choosing lines of text once we've read the entire play, and you will be doing a very close reading like this in a presentation to the class. And so next I'm going to show you an example of what that will look like.